Live on Building in Public, and today we're featuring Dan Erickson from Viable. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. So we got connected through Todd Goldberg, right?
We did, yeah. Todd was one of our earliest supporters over here at Viable.
Cool. How did you guys originally connect?
So actually, that's kind of a long and curving story. But if you don't mind, I can kind of hop into it if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Viable was actually first founded with a slightly different mission than what we're currently pursuing. So what we're currently pursuing is helping companies mine their qualitative data and customer feedback for insights. And we do that using GPT-3. However, before we did that, we were still in the qualitative and customer feedback space, but we were laser focused on helping early stage companies find product market fit using the superhuman product market fit process. We actually built out a product called Viable Fit that helped automate that entire sort of feedback pipeline. From sending the survey out to collecting the results, to analyzing the results and helping you come up with a roadmap that could help you achieve product market fit. And so when we actually went out to originally raise for that idea, the obvious person to go talk to was Rahul Vora over at Superhuman.
Yep.
And Todd Goldberg is investment partners with Rahul over there. So they were one of the very first people we talked to when we first went out to raise.
That's great. So were you going in there telling the story of how you wanted to take sort of the thinking and learning that they've done and sort of give more people access to the best of that? Is that kind of the...
Yeah, that was it, basically. Yeah, we went in and it was a really interesting pitch because we didn't actually have to convince them that this was something that would work. It was very much a valuable process already at Superhuman.
Right.
And so, chatting with them it was pretty cool to be able to just dig straight into the meat of it right there. I think we actually ended up having brunch in San Francisco on a Saturday together. That was our first meeting.
Oh, cool.
Nice. So for people who don't have background, could you talk a little bit about what their product process is and what made it so special and kind of stand out to you?
Sure. So the team over there has developed a way of measuring product market fit. And it centers around a question that Sean Ellis actually came up with. And that question is, how disappointed would you be if you could no longer use Superhuman or, insert product name here? And what they've done is they've built a little bit of a survey up around that. So there's that as the initial question. And then there's 3 additional questions that are important to ask in order to help you understand how your customers think about your product and how they think you need to improve it in order to meet their needs. So first question that we asked was, and this was actually a while ago, so let me make sure I'm getting these exactly right. But first question was, what kind of person would get the most benefit from using this product? And that gives your customers a place to kind of describe the ideal user in their own words. This is super helpful for understanding how you should be positioning your product, who you should be targeting with the product, and so on and so forth. Then next, we ask what is the main benefit that you receive from this product? This is how we can tell what your strength is. What's the biggest thing that's actually driving customers to use it? This is going to be showing you what your differentiator is between you and your competitors and you and the rest of the market. And it kind of shows you where you need to double down on to make sure that you maintain your lead. The very next one that we ask, and this is actually the last one, there's only 4 questions in this survey, is how can we improve the product for you? And that is just an open-ended kind of catch-all. I like to call that one almost like the suggestion box question,
right.
Where users can type in whatever they want. And in fact, actually, all 3 of those questions at the end there are open-ended text questions. You want to get the words from your customers in their own words, not in sort of a multiple choice style. Then you feed all of the answers of that into basically into a database somewhere. It could be a spreadsheet. It could be really anything. Superhuman uses Airtable for this. So you feed all the responses into one place there. And then they went through and they tagged each response with pain points and features that customers were talking about, and feature requests and things like that. So basically, they went through and manually structured the data. Then from there, they can create some pivot tables that allows them to see what are the most requested features, what are the features that people are complaining about the most, all of those things that can help them really narrow in on the right persona and the right product to build for them. Mm-hmm. And then they can turn around and use that for quarterly planning, or, in the very early stage, maybe even weekly planning, to be able to sort of execute against that. And get get a good roadmap going. And you can actually measure product market fit using that first question. So that first question is a multiple choice question. There's 3 possible answers to it. The first one is somewhat not disappointed. So basically, they would not be disappointed if they could no longer use the product. The second one is somewhat disappointed. They'd be a little disappointed if they couldn't use the product. So they're the equivalent to this one might be like passives in an NPS sense. Then lastly is very disappointed. These are the people that would be like super disappointed if they couldn't use the product anymore. These are your product believers. They're the ones that really, really, need the product that you're selling. And turns out there's a magic number there. So if 40% or more of your customers say that they would be very disappointed if they could no longer use your product, you've got product market fit, or at least it's highly correlated with product market fit. And this was developed by Sean Ellis in a study across about 100 different startups that he did, and he was searching for a specific question he could ask that would be most correlated with product market fit. So that's how it was developed. And what we did,
sort of the go ahead.
Yeah, and what we did was basically turned that into an automated process. It takes a lot of time to go through and manually tag every bit of feedback that comes through, and then even more time to build out the pipeline of sending the survey, collecting the results, presenting the results in a way that allows your team to actually understand where their priorities are. And so we built that whole flow, and started using some NLP to do automated tagging of that, which is what actually brought us into the very next product that we ended up building.
Right. And so it sounds like the starting point for this is around helping people achieve product market fit. And then when you talk about this NLP and you mentioned GPT-3 and larger data sets, that sounds like people who probably already achieved product market fit. So have you shifted kind of the segment of customers that you're addressing?
Yeah. Let me tell you the story there. So we raised our pre-seed back in January of 2020, and used those funds to build up the product, the original product, the Viable Fit product. We launched that product on Product Hunt in June of 2020, and we actually had some great reception of it, but a lot of them were very much side projects, and there wasn't a lot of appetite to pay for something like this. Mm-hmm. However, at the same time, we started seeing usage from much larger companies that clearly already had product market fit. These are companies that you would recognize. And were
they thinking about using it in the way for launching new products?
So it was split, actually. We started to dig in. We were like, okay, why are these companies using us? And we started digging in and started talking to them. And it turns out it's for 2 things. One, it was for launching new products. So they were testing new product lines and things like that. But it was also to help them understand gaps in the existing products that they had and understand their customers more. We also started to get requests for analyzing content outside of just the survey that we sent. Right? They were sending their own UX research surveys. They were getting NPS responses. They were getting in-app sort of reviews written up. And so they were looking for a way to make sense of all of that data as well. Moving up market, that's where the money is. And that is actually a much larger problem to solve. After digging into this new problem, we found that actually 80% of data that companies collect is qualitative data. It's unstructured text. However, 80% of the data that companies use to make decisions is actually quantitative data. It's like product analytics, it's conversion rates,
Interesting.
It's, all of that kind of stuff. So they're actually missing a huge chunk of context when they're making their decisions because they're using the easy to use data. Right, quantitative data has been used for a long time. We have great tools to be able to use it. Things like amplitude, mix panel, or digging into even deeper things like looker and mode and those kinds of things. Those help teams make decisions using quantitative data. There's not really that many services out there that help teams make decisions using qualitative data, and so that's what we pivoted towards.
Cool. And when I think about the problem that you're describing, I would imagine that a big piece of value in sort of being able to turn qualitative data into quantitative data to some extent is you get people into a common understanding on a team would shape to understand a common understanding of what the feedback is versus you can't necessarily get a dozen people to all read through 100 emails or something. So is there a certain scale of qualitative feedback at which this like really starts to kick in and become powerful?
Yeah, it's different for every company because every company has different capacity for absorbing this kind of information. Super early stage startups, for instance, they're not actually getting that much feedback back, and usually the founder and the rest of the team can read through everything. Right, they're reading every tweet, they're reading every NPS feedback, they're reading every support ticket, and that's super healthy for an early stage team. But as you start to grow, you start collecting a lot more feedback. And even in places that you don't necessarily think of as feedback every time. For example, customer support tickets. There is a huge amount of customer support tickets that come in. And by definition, no one reads all of them. Right? That's why you hire customer support reps. And so basically, as soon as you have more data that you are collecting than any single person can read, something like Viable can be very helpful. Now, if you're looking for like a magic number, we find that right around 1,000 pieces of feedback a month is when you should start using something like this.
And how does that look like if you're getting customer support feedback? Let's say it comes in all kinds of different explanations, and presumably you can run that through GPT-3, and that sort of distills some commonalities. So I'm just trying to imagine what this workflow looks like. Can you
let me tell you a little bit about how it works, basically. We built an aggregation system, and what this does is allows you to integrate Viable with many different data sources, including things like Intercom, Zendesk, Front, Delighted, and then thousands more through Zapier, which allows us to basically pipe in any sort of unstructured text that your customers are writing in. When we ingest a piece of unstructured text, our system structures it. What it does is, without any human input from you, goes in and finds the topics in each piece of text, and then actually contextually adds both a sentiment and an emotion to each one of those topics. So, for example, if somebody said, "I'm having problems with checkout. I can't seem to figure out how to add another payment method." We can put in checkout as negative, and we can say frustration as the emotion there. Payment method we might also do as negative, and then say confusion for that one, right? So now we've tagged two different topics. We have both checkout and payment methods. Both of them have been contextually sort of enriched and then stored in an index that we put together. From there, now you've got this nice sort of structured data set. It allows us to show you trends in topics over time. So we can see things like, here's your top topics for the past 90 days and how it's changed over the last 90 days. But also things like, here's your top negative topics. Here's the stuff you need to focus on. Here's the top frustrating things, the top confusing things, the top exciting things. We're even experimenting with doing things like top feature requests, where we can pull out specific feature requests there. And that is using a combination of our own in-house trained models. We have over 1 million data points that we've used to train these things. And then we're also using GPT-3 under the hood for some of the structuring there.
That's
how
cool.
does the...
How are... Oh, just wondering how are other people around you kind of thinking about this stuff too? Like the whole idea of using like ML sentiment analysis on like integrated with these customer service tickets and workflows within a company. Is that shifting overall? Are people like using more qualitative data analysis, or how have you seen that changing?
Yeah. So over the last, really doing something like this wasn't really accurately possible up until about 18 months ago. And it was really the advent of large transformer NLP models that allowed for this sort of in-depth analysis to be done. But yes, there's a huge appetite for using this data that companies already have. In fact, there's actually a handful of companies out there that are already doing this kind of thing. For example, in the larger end of the market, you've got like the Qualtrics and the Medallias of the world who are doing first-party data collection, but also sort of insights analysis on that data that they collect. There's not that many out there that are actually doing aggregate, so basically pulling in from multiple sources. There's a handful of startups that are doing that, but most of them are focused on monitoring and alerting. So doing a lot of the stuff that I was just talking about, where you're monitoring trends, and maybe alerting on top of it, maybe building some dashboards out around it where you're like, going in and sort of acting like an analyst and building out dashboards that can hopefully answer your questions. What we've done actually, and so our first thesis was people need to be able to use qualitative data in their analysis. Our second thesis is you shouldn't have to be an analyst to be able to use qualitative data. So the way we've differentiated ourselves from the rest of the market is actually by not targeting people who are responsible for analyzing qualitative data, but by targeting the people who are interacting with those people. Mm-hmm. So specifically, every piece of analysis in every company, whether it's a quantitative analysis or a qualitative analysis, starts with a question. Somebody on your team has a question. How can we improve the calendar? What are the top customer complaints? Mm-hmm. So on and so forth. Right now, the way that works is somebody asks that question to an analyst somewhere. That could be a product analyst. That could be a data scientist. It could be anyone on that sort of analytics team. Then the analyst goes in. They translate that question into like a complex SQL query. Build out some tables, build out some dashboards, and then maybe a couple of days or weeks later, they hand that back to the person who originally asked the question and say, all right, here's a dashboard that I hope answers your question. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, yes, it does, in that like they can go back and forth and kind of refine it over time. However, NLP is now good enough that it can understand human questions. So because it starts as a question, we decided to just start with the question. Now, the way that Viable works is instead of just building out complex dashboards and things like that, you can ask a question in plain English, and we'll get you an answer in seconds, also in plain English. This was done in 2015 by Power BI over at Microsoft for the quantitative side, but it actually wasn't adopted that much because it was only embedded in Power BI. You couldn't interact with it where you're actually working. So what we did on top of that, we wanted to democratize access to this data set, was we actually built a Slack bot. So our customers actually integrate and they can @mention Viable, ask their question, and we'll post the answer right there in line where you're having the conversation. So we meet you where you're working already and where you're already talking to your customers. Or already talking to your coworkers, and that allows us to really get that feedback loop really tight, and allows our customers to learn very quickly.
That's pretty cool. I don't mean to put you on the spot if you don't have a demo ready, but we do have a screen share available. Sure. I don't know if you can. I just enabled screen share for you. Okay. I don't know if you have anywhere we could look at this workflow or kind of some demo data that's.
For sure. Let me go ahead and get that ready here. One moment.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't tell you we had some screen share available. We just started using it a week or so ago. We really like it.
We're on with it now. Super fun though.
No worries. I just need to grab.
Yeah, we don't want we don't want to have you pull up your customer data or internal.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a little process I have to run in order to anonymize
a demo
it.
server
So
or something.
just got to do that real quick.
But I feel
no,
like the concept of being able to, take all of this unstructured data and bring it into the structure and being able to sort of interact with Slack in this way feels like a really natural way to interact. So I'm just curious to see, like, if I'm a user of this thing, how do I, kind of what's my experience of it?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
actually, I think I would end up having a follow-up question around that, which we could address either now or later, depending on the screen share. But
Sure.
it seems like it serves the needs of, like, you've mentioned product teams, kind of these business analyst teams. You've mentioned kind of customer service as an inbound kind of point for inbound data flow. So I wonder, like, with so many different use cases, I mean, it almost seems like it can do so many different things and serve people in different ways. I wonder, like, how do you narrow the kind of definition and, in a sense, let's call it like the sales process or the product pitch, to make sure that you connect with a person who can actually make a decision to adopt this?
Yeah, definitely. So that's actually been it's been a little bit of a challenge over the past few months since we launched this thing. So we launched this back in December as a pilot product with just a handful of sort of personally invited companies. We grew that up to about 25. And we targeted many different personas for that pilot because we wanted to learn whose problems we could solve best and who the buyers were. And turns out of the Venn diagram of people that we can solve problems and people who will pay is squarely in basically 2 or 3 different teams. So number one is product teams. Product teams are responsible for synthesizing customer feedback and turning it into an actionable roadmap that the company can execute against. And a huge input into that is customer feedback. Some of it is their own sort of personal intuition and other stakeholders as well. But a huge part of it is customer feedback. And historically, PMs have sort of built their own sort of internal model of what customer feedback looks like just by reading through NPS or reading through App Store reviews and that kind of thing to help them understand sort of where they need to move. When you give people like that access to that same data set, but in a way that allows them to sort of get a much more sort of detailed picture of it and a much higher overview, it allows them to get to that ideal roadmap much faster. So it's working really well for product teams specifically. Also, we have found a small niche inside of direct-to-consumer and retail companies. These companies don't actually get a lot of product usage data, right? It's not like when you buy a jacket online, it pings their analytics servers every time you put it on. So they rely very heavily on qualitative feedback. In fact, most of these teams actually have teams inside of them that are either customer insights teams or voice of customer teams.
So they're actually sending out like survey. They construct and send out surveys to anybody who bought, and then they.
So these are either constructing surveys or even just running NPS type surveys or mining data out of customer reviews. Oftentimes, these teams are manually tagging every review that comes in for each product that the company sells. They are trying to structure the data themselves and query the data themselves to answer these kinds of questions. What we do is a good chunk of the boring part of that job for them, right? So we're able to sort of identify those trends easily. We can automatically tag so they don't have to waste their time manually tagging everything, and they can still read through responses using our system. So we're seeing pretty good success in that market as well. We actually started with customer support as the target because that's where the bulk of the data is. Customer support tickets happen to be a very large data set that is mostly unused by companies. However, we solve more problems for their internal customers than we do for that team themselves. So, for example, customer support teams are manually tagging, but they're usually manually tagging for process-related tags. Like this was this kind of problem, or it needed to be routed to this person, or that kind of thing. Not usually topical, and not sentiment either. However, oftentimes they're the first people that say product managers will go to whenever they have a question about what customers are feeling. Right? They'll go in and say, "Hey, we just launched this feature 2 weeks ago. What's the overall customer sentiment?" And then somebody on the customer support team has to like carve some time out of their day to stop answering questions from customers and solving problems for customers to go and do some analysis. And to be honest, the vast majority of times when they do that, it's actually they don't want to stop handling the customer tickets. They'd much rather just say whatever's on top of their head and it goes there, which means you get a little bit of confirmation bias, recency bias from that particular answer. So all that to say, customer support was a really good way of getting some great data, but they're not the ones that are actively going in and asking questions and doing the analysis. So we ended up actually moving over more towards product managers and customer insights teams.
Yeah, and you mentioned D2C. I was also curious about if you're seeing other verticals kind of as particularly good fits for this kind of thing. I don't know, what have you been noticing? Have any of them been surprising to you, just in terms of how different companies and different industries might like take in and process data?
Sure. So it's less about industry and more about the data that the company's collecting. So any company can collect the right kind of data to be able to do this. But we found that companies that are specifically soliciting customer feedback have a much better time than companies who are just piping in sort of incidental qualitative written text, like, say, customer support tickets. Our best customers are ones that are piping in product reviews, app store reviews, user research surveys, onboarding surveys, churn surveys, basically places where they're specifically asking their customers to give them feedback. And when you pipe that kind of data into our system, it's much, much more powerful than just piping in something like Zendesk tickets.
Mm-hmm. And when we think about sort of the viable products and sort of the evolution, it seems like kind of the automation, the kind of the language and kind of the GPT-3 aspect is an important part. It was like a new innovation that lets you build a service around that. And I wonder sort of, are you pretty engaged with community of other GPT-3 developers or with the OpenAI team? And do you have sort of like your own feature requests, or where does like the interface between GPT-3, which is just a service that people can use, and then sort of the needs for you to serve your customers? How do you sort of coordinate that?
Sure. The answer to both of those questions is yes. I'm an active participant myself in the OpenAI community. That was originally a Slack community, and I think has just recently moved over to being a discourse community that's a more forum-based thing. And I've actually been active there since I think late May or June of last year, which I think when I joined there were less than 1,000 people in that community, and last I checked there were something like 70,000.
Wow.
It's been growing like crazy over there, so I've actually helped out quite a few different companies sort of think through how to use GPT-3, just because I was one of the early people to start working with it, and it's a very different paradigm to work with GPT-3 than even most ML services. It's a prompt-based design instead of a just flat API kind of thing. So you have to learn how to talk to it. And I joke sometimes that it's like talking to an alien toddler. You kind of have to like figure out like, okay, I think I know what words you're using. I think you know what words I'm using. Let's like make sure we're using the right words so that we get the right output. So it's been really cool to work with that community. Also, I have been working with the team over at OpenAI myself as well, and I've actually given like lunch and learns with the team before, and things like that. But really, sort of even mostly on a weekly basis, actually at this point, chatting with the applied AI folks over there.
And I got to imagine like a lot of GPT-3 is kind of interfaced as like a black box, like that's the sort of alien toddler. So are there like specific feature requests or kind of advice that you give around how you as a customer or kind of user of that API would, different ways you'd want to express ideas to it or different things that they might have access to that they could surface?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I've been giving feedback on a handful of things, all the way from sort of quality of life improvements in like the usage reporting, all the way up to hey, here's where I see the model failing, over and over again. Here's some places that you could improve. In fact, we've even been able to share some prompts that we've created to help them use that as sort of a quality bar, to help them understand sort of where they need to get to. And some of our feedback has actually already been implemented into some of the APIs that they've been releasing.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like a great community, very vibrant.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It actually we were actually featured as one of three companies that's using GPT-3 on the OpenAI blog earlier I think last month. And it was pretty cool to see us get mentioned up there with the likes of like Algolia and actually an entertainment one there as well. And that's actually still providing leads. So content strategy is pretty good.
That's great. Have you bumped into our friend James Yu built this thing called Pseudo Write?
I have not bumped into him yet. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's kind of a creativity enabler for kind of writers.
Okay, cool.
Using GPT-3 to kind of help shape writing prompts or help kind of be generative in creativity. Awesome. And then I have another friend who I think he has not officially launched it or been publicly associated with it, but he built a little service where you could it would write tweets for you based on your style of tweeting. Okay,
yeah, I've seen a few people do that one. That's a really good one to test the prompt.
Yeah, it was surprisingly accurate for me when I ran mine. I was reading. It was both funny, but also had shades of me that I could see in it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did
cool.
you want to screen share if you got the stuff up?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready to go now. So
cool. So we have a new version of screen share, where we all stay on the bottom there.
Amazing.
So can you still see us? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay. So what you're looking at here is our staging environment. It has roughly 2 months worth of data from Superhuman themselves. Actually, we've anonymized the data here. But this is customer feedback for Superhuman, the email client. And what you're looking at is the feedback feed. This is where we have aggregated all of the feedback into one place. Now, this is a reverse chronological list, so you'll see the latest stuff up here. We've actually done some scrambling of the data here, so this feedback is actually not matching up with these dates just because it's in our staging environment. Wanted to make it as anonymized as possible. But yeah, we can then sort and filter through this, right? So we have our different sources here. We piped some data in from Intercom, from Delighted, from Front, and then a bunch through the API as well. Then we have different filters for the feedback, right? We can filter it by sentiment. So give me the positive stuff or the negative stuff. We can do it by emotion, frustration, confusion, excitement, or topic, calendar, email, etc. But we also allow for customer traits. So you can add basically segment data into your data, and we can then sort of augment that each of those users with things like job titles and locations and age, if you can pipe that kind of stuff into us. We have users using it for sort of the obvious of like job titles, but also for things like what paid plan are they on, or what was the cohort month that they joined, so that you can start asking very specific questions about very specific customer segments. We also allow for feedback metadata here as well. So if the same user has given, say, 5 different products, 5 different reviews, we might have a drop down over here that would be product. And then you can go see all the reviews for a specific product to do that. So, for example, here I can open up topic here and then go to calendar. And this will actually basically filter this whole thing down to just the calendar itself. So here we go. Here's all the feedback about calendar, right? Here's calendar right here, so on and so forth.
Oh, that's good.
So here's everything that they've written. However, the better way of asking this question, or of exploring this, is literally just asking a question. So instead of just kind of breaking it down and looking at the individual bits of feedback, you have to scroll through hundreds here. We can just ask the question. So here we go. And what this
when
is
you ask the question, is that hitting GPT-3?
It is. So basically how this works is that question runs through a pipeline on our side that includes GPT-3 as well as some internal models to translate that question into a set of search filters. And then from there, it collects all of the relevant responses to answer that question, pipes all of that data back into another process that actually answers the question using a combination, once again, of our own internal systems and GPT-3. So here we go. How can we improve the calendar? We should improve the calendar by adding Zoom and Hangout integration, better drag and drop functionality, and more intuitive navigation. I actually don't think this is a great answer on this one. We sometimes have a miss in the beginning. However, you can actually tell us when something goes bad, and we can use that to improve the system.
When you say you don't think this is a great answer, I actually it's kind of a good answer. So,
yeah, it is.
What
pretty
about
good.
This is not...
In that, actually, just today, Superhuman released their Zoom and Hangout integration for their calendar.
There you go.
Literally happened today, and they were actually able to use this to identify that as well. They actually had already done their own internal analysis to identify it as well, but that took them hours, if not days, and we identified it for them in about 10 seconds. So it was pretty cool to see that line up with their own internal analysis. However, better drag and drop functionality and more intuitive navigation, not quite specific enough for sort of what I would expect our system to be able to do. So let's see if we can generate a better answer here. So we'll ask that same question again. And what this will do is kind of refresh that answer and see if we can dig out some extra sort of details from it. Looks like we're going through. Here we go. Much better. We should improve the calendar by adding a Zoom integration, better calendar, always on calendar. Those are, once again, too broad. But we should make it easier to add Hangout links and make it easier to check other people's availability. So that's probably what they meant by better usability and things like that, right?
Right. Actually, this is interesting. So if I understand the way Viable works is you've fed in all of this qualitative data from these various sources and then used GPT-3 and some other models to tag the content in this way. And then when you're doing this query, do you know the specific pieces of feedback and channel that came in and caused you've generated positive sentiment on this calendar thing? Okay, I was getting ahead of it. Okay.
Yeah, so right below that answer that we just asked, we show you every piece of data. Yeah, so the answer's up here. You ask the question, you hit this, and then we found 129 pieces of feedback to back that answer up, and here's all of the answers that the pieces of feedback that we use to do that.
Right.
Yep.
Can I click on one of the features like people's availability? If that were like a hyperlink?
However, one of the things that we're going to be adding soon is the ability to click into each one of these and have us suggest follow-up questions to go in and ask things like, how do people want to use a Zoom integration, for instance? Or maybe even go broader than that and look at this and say, like, we saw that this one had integration in it. So which integrations do our customers want us to build? In fact, let's go ask that question. Why not? Come on. Screen share sometimes slows my computer down to a crawl. Here we go. All right. So which integrations do our customers want us to build? Let's ask the question, and we will see which integrations are going to be most important for Superhuman to look into. Our customers want us to build integrations with Zoom and Slack. They also want a better calendar integration, and they would like to be able to schedule events from within Superhuman. That's some old feedback in that you can actually do that these days, but we have not ingested the extra feedback into our staging data. But over time, we actually do take recency into account. As subjects sort of drop off, we stop using those in the answers as much.
That'd be interesting. Do you have I could almost see like using this to create something of a Google Trends for like topics or questions that sort of have fallen off or kind of become less relevant in feedback.
Yep. So here we go. Let's go over to trends.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. Perfect. Yep. So this staging data is a little messy. You'll notice like email and mail and emails are all three separate topics here. That is because of the way that we're doing topic grouping on staging. We're doing some experiments there. In production, those would all be actually grouped into a single email thing, which would actually dominate this graph, to be honest. That's what most people are talking about when they're talking about Superhuman. Who would have guessed? But you can also see things in here like calendar and inbox zero and splits and desktop app specifically. Also commands, so keyboard commands and keyboard shortcuts and things like that.
Right.
We then also are able to break things out by sentiment. So we can look at just the negative topics, right? And that could be things like, looks like we've got some negativity around notifications, possibly. Looks like this one is, mail? Yeah, email and mail. I agree. Email sucks. I think everybody agrees on that one. But then we could also do things like delightful. What are people delighted about? Not a whole lot of delight that we have pulled out specifically in this data set. I'm seeing a lot of just like single ones here. But keyboard shortcuts, delightful. That's one of the things that people really love about Superhuman there. Yep.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So that's kind of how that works on the trends side. We also have the activity feed. I'm actually not going to click onto that because on staging it's a little broken right now. But
sure.
we basically what that does is it tracks every question and answer that we have generated. So every time you ask a question, we generate an answer. That goes into that activity log right there. And you can see who asked the question and when they asked it in there. So you can kind of share knowledge between your team. And then lastly, let me cover the integrations here. We kind of go from there. So the way integrations work is we have two kinds of integrations. We have the native, what we call our native integrations, and that's these four right here. We're constantly adding to these. We've actually built a system to really make it easy for us to add these new integrations. But right now we have Delighted, Front, Intercom, and Zendesk. The way that you work with this is you literally just click this, click the install button, sign in, and we take it from there. There's no code involved on your side, no complex integration work that you have to do. It's literally just click and go. In fact, actually, the vast majority of our customers end up being able to integrate their data and ask their first question within 15 minutes of signing up. We actually pull in the last 30 days worth of data for these four, but we also have a Zapier integration, which allows you to pipe in things from Twitter or Typeform or Facebook comments. If you have an Airtable like Superhuman does for all of your customer feedback, you can pipe that stuff in as well. Really, kind of the sky's the limit when it comes to the Zapier stuff. That only works for data going forward. However, if you've got stuff in CSV format, at this point, we're happy to have you just email that over to us, and we'll get that uploaded for you as well. So that reminds me of another question I had when you were describing. Is you mentioned kind of the CSV and how you sort of have
oh, and by the way, if I don't know if we're still looking at screen share, but you could stop it if we're back.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and stop there.
Great, yeah. But we were talking about how you mentioned how the CSV could be helped with kind of some internal service that you could do, and I wonder how much of that feels like it may be an area to expand the offering or to sort of help guide people up this new way of working. Just because, I'm sure that, I think we all love technology and it's very scalable, and, kind of human services are sometimes, messy, but also when there's like a new value prop in the world that is maybe, hard to understand exactly how to use, or maybe the tools aren't built, they don't know exactly how it fits the workflow. Sometimes maybe offering more of a full stack solution could help. So I just wonder is that something you sort of feel yourself pulled towards, or you sort of against kind of doing
so
more there?
we actually purposefully right now are manually onboarding every customer that we have. And part of that is to help us learn where the friction is in the product, to understand where the confusion is, so that we can sort of smooth those things over. But part of it is also just to help them understand this sort of new interaction paradigm. Humans aren't really used to asking computers questions and getting like a human-like answer back. And so one of the bigger challenges we have is actually helping them understand what kinds of questions they can ask. And so one thing that we're really focused on now is helping people get the best answers they can from those questions. And then also helping people understand the right question to ask. And what I mean by that is there's multiple ways that we can do this. So right now we do this in a very sort of way that won't scale, right? Where me and my co-founder are both jumping in and sort of helping our customers think through their data sets. We kind of go through it with them with a screen share and everything, and just kind of help them think through how to mine the thing for insights. In the future, we can automate some of that. We can do things like monitoring and alerting around that trend graph. So say your normal mention of the bug topic is like 5 a day, and then one day we see 500. We could easily build some anomaly detection around that, proactively alert you to say, hey, we just saw a spike in people reporting bugs. And then even go a step further than that, because we have the power of our question and answering system to actually generate a question and generate an answer that will help you get at what is actionable about that result. Right. If we saw bugs, we might actually ask the question, what bugs are customers reporting today? And we could get a nice list of those for you. We might even be able to prioritize whichever one is the most important there, and send that along with the alert itself. So instead of just being like, hey, you should look into bugs, we can be like, actually, looks like checkout is having a problem with payment methods.
Yeah, that's cool. I could imagine that if it's not already, this whole process will become kind of meta for you at some point as you use your own system to get feedback from your customers. So how are you thinking about like basically ingesting the feedback that's most helpful to you right now? Like, what does that look like from customers and also investors or other people who are around the table kind of supporting you guys?
Yeah. So right now we do pipe some feedback into our own production instance of Viable. And there's two main sources that we're using right now. So we have an onboarding survey that we send out prior to everyone onboarding. And one of the questions there is an open-ended text question. And that open-ended text question is, what problem are you hoping to solve with Viable? And basically, all of that data is getting, the answers to that question is getting piped into our system, which allows us to understand what people want to get out of our product. On top of that, we actually pipe every mention of us on Twitter into Viable as well. So when people are talking about us there or sharing us, we can kind of get some good sort of top level trend data around that. Now, right now, we're actually less than 1,000 per month that's going in because we're early days. So it's a bit noisy. But as we grow and as we add more data sources and start collecting more feedback, then we will be able to use our own product to build the product. This was actually a very important thing for me. I found that when I've worked places that have really, really dogfooded and used their own product to build the product, those ones tend to be the ones that succeed better. Yammer was a very good example of this. We built Yammer as a way to communicate internally. Right? That was our goal when we were building Yammer. It was to make transparent communication within the company very easy and enjoyable. It turns out every company, or at least lots of companies, needed that same thing. And so when we improved it for us, we improved it for our customers. And when we improved it for our customers, we improved it for us. And it was just this awesome sort of virtuous cycle that allowed us to improve very quickly.
Yeah, we find that because we're building a communication tool at Highlighter, we find that same thing as we end up running all of our meetings. Even though we don't mean them to be public videos that we create, we still run them on Highlighter, and then we learn all kinds of ways to improve in places where we're kind of held up where we could be better. So I love those virtuous feedback loops. We certainly experience and see that every day. Misty, you were talking about zooming out a little bit. Did you want to zoom out?
Yeah, I feel like there's so many things. One thing that comes across in something you were just saying is that I was struck by your background, just how much you seem to have learned by tinkering and figuring out what you personally thought were problems, like starting out from college, it seemed, and how you taught yourself how to code and all of that. So that was one thing I was kind of curious, like as an entrepreneur, what before you started this, like what was itching at you? What were you testing out before the superhuman idea even? And like, kind of what was the process behind how you think about like what problems are interesting to explore?
Sure. So when I think about building a product, there's multiple kinds of products that you can build, and I don't just mean that from like maybe consumer or enterprise or anything like that, but even from there are VC backable products, and then there are products that you can grow on your own. There are products that require it to just be like a side project for a long time. And so I was, when I first started thinking about something that I wanted to build, I was actually deciding between sort of all three of those things. So basically like, do I want to, continue doing the executive thing? Because before this, I was the VP of engineering at Ease. And before that, I was CTO at Gettable. So I've been doing this sort of engineering executive thing for a while. And I was trying to decide, would I go that route, or would I go, towards building a product myself? And was really gravitating towards building a product, but wanted to figure out what kind of commitment I wanted to make. Did I want to go all in and try to grow something crazy fast, like a VC startup, requires, or did I want to build something that was, more of a business that I could run myself, that would grow enough revenue for me to, kind of relax and go that way. Or did I want to go back into executive and then, maybe tinker with some products on the side? So part of it was that, and I started exploring different ideas and sort of bucketing them by those different buckets. But also I'm ambitious. And so I found myself continually gravitating towards the ones that could grow quickly, and the ones that I thought were a huge opportunity. However, as I mentioned earlier, we started this company to help solve product market fit for early stage companies. The reason we started that was because of my experience at Gettable. Gettable was a construction equipment rental marketplace. When I joined as the CTO. There was just the two non-technical co-founders when I started. We didn't have any customers. We didn't have a product. We didn't have a team. We didn't have a code base. So it was, right from the very beginning. And I spent almost 4 years there trying to find product market fit. So spending a lot of time with customers, understanding their needs, spending a lot of time with suppliers because it was a marketplace. So I had, two kinds of users to understand, let alone the internal users, at the company as well. So it was a lot to bite off, and really understanding and sort of like building a process around finding product market fit. We weren't really sophisticated enough to do that at the time. I learned a ton, but unfortunately didn't learn enough to actually find product market fit with that product. And then after my time at Ease, I came across the article written by Rahul Vora that ended up in the first round review about the product market fit engine that they built over there, and that kind of opened my eyes. I was like, wait a minute, there's a repeatable process for product market fit. So I was like, okay, wait, that is a pretty cool idea. I want to explore it. So really, it was a lot of reading. It was a lot of tinkering myself. In fact, I was going. So my wife is an avid gardener. I was looking at building like some consumer gardening app kind of thing. I was looking at. So I was an executive prior to this, and that meant a lot of calendaring, a lot of email, a lot of sort of productivity type stuff. I was also exploring building out basically a personal productivity suite. That would allow me to do time blocking in my calendar a lot better and manage my tasks and things like that. So exploring a bunch of different things. But the one that stuck out with me the most was this opportunity to help companies understand their customers better and build the right products for their customers. Because I had that problem before and it was rough. So
you had a lot of very first-hand experience with it, and something that you could really dig your teeth in and know that that you're serving people well. That's great. Well, I wanted to. I know we're actually bumping into the end of the hour already. It seems like it's kind of flown by fast. It was fun to get to see you and learn about Viable, and to actually get to see the actual product was really exciting for us too. We're just now starting to be able to do that. So thanks. I wanted to thank you for spending the time with us and sharing your story. And hopefully we'll see you out on the internet. We'll create some highlights and share them around. So love to grab the best bits and get them out there.
Awesome. Definitely excited to see those highlights. And thank you so much for having me today. It was great chatting.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah.
Thanks.
This was fun.
Thank you.
Okay.